The president of South Africa was at the UN, and guess what? His hand was out as always.
The Western forces are terrible. Communist states don't fail. It's the sanctions. And can I have some money, please? It's pretty much the speech, my friend.
From his experience and the journey of South Africa, the ANC and South Africa value the importance of engaging all parties to conflicts to achieve peaceful, just, and enduring resolutions. Right, this is the same government that killed 144 mentally ill people. This is the same government that killed 30, 40 miners in Marikana. This is the same government that refuses to have any commission of inquiry into farm murders. But, at least he does value, peace and negotiations. Sure, buddy, we all believe you.
So what he's actually saying there is we value peace and we want to get the Russians and the Ukrainians together to negotiate a peace. Yeah, buddy, there was a peace agreement that was agreed between Russia and Ukraine. And it wasn't signed because Boris Johnson told Zelensky he shouldn't sign it. So he didn't. There was actually one there, buddy. Like, you may have forgotten this, but oh, well, okay, whatever. So you may be looking at that going, oh, well, look, at least Ramaphosa is siding with, his BRIC partners, right? I mean, at least he's not part of the New World Order. Sorry, guys. He actually says that what he wants to do is he wants to summon the necessary will and resolve to regain the momentum towards the achievement of the UN 2030 agenda. You know the one, you'll own nothing and be happy, commie bullshit, technocratic rule, global dystopias, that one.
The goal for sustainable development. As soon as you hear the term sustainable and development, it's globalist in nature. So, for example, one of those goals is free and just healthcare for all. And that's why Cyril crows about the NHI in the speech, despite the fact that it hasn't passed and we have no money to implement it, and the government can't run a bath, let alone an entire health system. But in line with Agenda 2030, this is why the NHI is being passed, ladies and gentlemen. You must look at those inferences being drawn and understand sometimes the ANC is not actually in charge of South Africa.
It's really not. So you may look at it and go, okay, well, let's actually look at the technicalities of what he's actually talking about. And some of these may string true. He talks about areas such as industrialization, of which South Africa has deindustrialized at the fastest rate of ever. He talks about the infrastructure. That infrastructure of ours that's crumbling. He talks about the much loved agriculture, give us back the land. Talks about water and energy. Well, we don't have any of that, mate. And he talks about education, the country where the pass rate is 30% and even that's too much. And then he talks about health. Well, the least said about health, the better, I suppose. So it's lovely to see that all the things that he's really deeming key policy positions are all failed globalist bullcrap policy positions where the national position on it has basically failed time and time again.
Well, I mean, to put it in better terms, I think the national position on these key things is actually the globalist position, which the ANC has just merely adopted because the globalists pay them off somehow. And I'm sure the globalists are in the back room saying, why can't the ANC just do something? And this is the part of the speech where Ramaphosa's hand comes out because he says he is very distraught and it is very unfortunate that rich countries have not met the financial commitments that they agreed to for poor countries. And once the hand goes out, he doesn't ask for 10 Rand or 20 Rand. He's asking for $100 billion for Africa to solve the climate change issue. So, Byron, this reminds me of the time he went to Britain, where the Times called him a most horrible fellow because all he did was go to Parliament and ask for money from the Brits. Nothing has changed, it seems.
In the Bible, Jesus is about to get his feet washed by oil. You know the passage, right? And off comes the disciples, and they're like, whoa, oil's expensive. Why didn't you sell the oil and give the money to the poor? And Jesus says, they'll always be poor, but I'll only be here for a short time. You know what, mate? Africa's always going to be poor because of stupid policies. And all we get here, time and time again in the speech is, we want to do the policies that made us poor. We want to do it on steroids. And can we please have some money, please? This isn't how you fix an economy, mate. And nothing in his speech shows us that he actually understands how to fix his own economy. Because in his eyes, he did a great thing because there's this thing called the African Continental Free Trade Area that has low tariffs. but nobody uses it, mate. And Africa is not a key trading partner of South Africa. Europe is. And if you look at our key tariffs to the rest of the world, we charge them astronomical money because, they can afford it. I mean, they're first world countries. Can you give us some more money, please? This approach isn't really helpful, mate, especially when you go into a global audience and your only comment is, can we have some money, please?
This is Cyril's mindset. My country's falling apart. We've run out of money. There's fires in every major city every second day. People are dying from malnutrition. Uh, we don't have electricity. We don't have water. What I'm going to do is go to the rest of the world and say, listen, we have been exploited. We are suffering because you are rich and we are not. So what I want you to do is give me more money. And the world's going to ask him, okay, what have you solved in your time as president? And he will say, I've had a lot of social compacts. And then he believes that the wokey UN will be like, that's wonderful news. That's all we want to hear. Here's $100 billion. Hopefully he's going to find out that's not how international policy actually does work. Now, does it?
No, and I find it very ironic because this guy, despite being the president of the country, shows us time and time again that he doesn't really understand the way that global politics actually works. So what we actually saw is at the Zimbabwe election time, he was the first to congratulate Mugabe, even when his own buddies in the Southern African Union, they were all like, this election seems a bit iffy. He was like, it's fine, guy, it's fine. He's going to win. But then he goes to the UN and says, guys, you need to lift the sanctions against Zimbabwe because if you don't, we're going to have another quarter of their population flood into our country. And then we're going to have to put up with it. And it's all because of the sanctions that you have there, and that we can't sustain that. That's not a good thing. And it's kind of like you have to ask the question, does his stupid head not link the election, the corruption that went on with the election, the failed policies of ZANU PF and people coming here? Does he not link the fact that it was ZANU PF that caused the sanctions in the first place, and that's why we've got more Zimbabweans here? And the answer is clearly no, because, it's like the Americans' fault or something, right?
But this always happens. Communism comes to a country, communism destroys a country, and all the commies say, oh no, but the sanctions destroyed the country. I mean, these people already think that Cuba is poor because it has sanctions. They already think North Korea is poor because it has sanctions. There's also other commie countries which miraculously are not poor, like China, like Vietnam, and a few others I'm not going to name. But there's always that dog whistle that just because something has failed, it's probably because of sanctions. And Russia is showing that that entire argument is complete and utter bullshit.